Hi and welcome to the Beginners to Advanced Guide to Learning Practical Web GIS, Web Design and Development course. So you can see here this is our course roadmap. So basically in this course I will try to finish all of this course module, and I already uploaded some HTML tutorials in my YouTube channel, as well as also uploaded some Leaflet.js tutorial. So you can easily find out this tutorial link in the video description so that you can easily watch this video. Okay, so today I will start a new series on CSS, and mainly in this CSS I will try to use some basic CSS properties in HTML. So then we will move to JavaScript, Bootstrap, OpenLayers, GeoServer, PostGIS, PHP Ajax, and we also see here the different types of libraries. And finally, after all of this complete this course module, we will go to the live project on Web GIS and development. Okay, so today our class is the CSS. So mainly CSS stands for the cascading style sheets. CSS describe how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, on other media. Okay, so mainly CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiply web pages all at once. Okay, so we can write the CSS with the HTML, and if you want you can write the CSS code in the other file. So today I will try to discuss all of these basic things in CSS. So first of all, you need to simply open your code editor. So here you can see this is my code editor, Visual Studio Code Editor, and here I already make a folder. This is the first class folder, CSS first class. This is the folder. I already created this folder. Just I simply click and drag this folder in this our Visual Studio Code Editor. Now you can see it will be opened, this folder. Okay, so I simply click to delete welcome page, and here you can see this is our folder, CSS first class folder. This folder I added with my Visual Studio Code Editor. So first of all, I need to make a HTML file. So for this I simply use here simply click to here new file and give this name is index.html and simply click to here. Okay, so now you can see here this is my HTML file I created. So now I add here the basic boilerplate of HTML. So I simply click to the exclamatory sign and simply click to enter. So now you can see this is our basic HTML boilerplate will be added in our HTML page. Okay, so now I will add a heading tag. So I use here the S1, and then I simply use here the write this Web GIS course. Okay, so now I simply click to save this my HTML file, and I simply open this file. You can see here a index.html file will be added in my folder. I simply click to here. So now you can see here Web GIS course will be added here. Okay, so now you can see here our page will be correctly added. Okay, and I will change here the title. This title I gave, this title is the first class on CSS. Okay, so I simply save it, and when I reload this page, now you can see here this title will be the same which title I input here, first class on CSS. So mainly CSS are used for the different types of style in your websites. Okay, it may be your color, your text align, and everything, every style you can do in the using the CSS. Okay, suppose you can define the CSS in many way. Suppose first way I will see here, simply you can see write the style, then you simply define your style here. Suppose I want to change the color, so I use here the color and I define this color is blue. Okay, and I simply click to save, and when I refresh my web page, you can see it will be blue. Okay, so now you can see it will be blue. So if you want, you can change this alignment. So now you can see this sentence are situated in the left side, but I want to move it the center. So I simply use here the another attribute. Suppose I use here the another attribute is text align, and I give the value is center. When I simply save it and click to run, you can see it move to the save. So in this case, you can write this code with the element. You can see this is our s1 tag, and I write this code in this element. Okay. So now it's called the inline css. Okay. So it's called the inline css. Okay. So if you want, you can make a external or internal css. So how you can define the internal css? You can simply, you can see here the head portion. So I simply make a style tag here. Suppose I make a style, and then I define which tag I want to style. You can see here I want to use here the s1, so I simply use here the s1. Okay, and then I use here the curly brackets. Then you define your style properties. Suppose I want to change this color. I gave this color, in this case I want to use here the red color. Okay, I use here the red color. Then I also define here the text align center, text. Okay, so I define here the color, then use the semicolon, then I define here the text align center. Okay, and I also remove this style now. Okay, so now you can see here, in this case I use the CSS between this head section. For this I use here the style tag, and between this style tag I use here the our tag name s1. Okay, and then I define my style properties. So when I save it, this code, and open my browser and reload it, you can see it will be work. So in this case, this is the internal CSS style. Okay, so now you can see here, first of type the CSS is the inline. When I use this here inline, okay, and this is the internal CSS, and if you want, you can also make a separate file. Okay, suppose you want to make a separate file, so that all of this CSS will be listed in your another file. Okay, so I take the another file from here, click to here, and I give this file name is index.css. I simply, a new file will be opened. Okay, so now I want to use this style. I simply remove it, and then I want to use the style here. So you can see here, this is the s1 tag. So I call this s1 tag, and then I use defined all of these color properties. Suppose in this case I want to color will be orange, and then I also define here the text align center. When I save it, so now you can see here, this index file, this is the CSS file, and this is the HTML file, but there are no common relation between to each other. So now you want to make a relation between this HTML file and CSS file. Okay, so for this I generate a link, so that it will be added with my HTML file. So you can simply, in your head portion, I make a link dot css, you can see being the css, and is the referral. It means the style sheet, it will be style sheet, and you define your the s reference, or it means what's the name of your CSS file. So you can define, you can see this my CSS file name is index.css. So I simply use here this name. You can simply use the dot and slash, then you can simply find your index.css and click to press to enter. So then this file will be added with our HTML code. Okay, so now I save it, and when I reload my page, you can get this result. Okay, so this is the common structure of CSS. you can mainly define your CSS in three ways. It's the inline CSS, it will be internal CSS or external CSS. Okay. So, mainly we use the external CSS, because when you use the lot of code CSS style sheet code, then our HTML page will be long, HTML code will be longer. Okay. So, then we will make another file for the CSS. Okay. So, now we also discuss about the some common CSS properties. Okay. So, first of all, you can see here I delete this style sheet file. Okay. So, now I also remove it. So, I also remove this file name. Okay. So, now I also talk about the some common properties of the HTML CSS file. Okay. So, first of all, div. So, div is the mainly a division of the page or section of a page. Okay. So, in this div, it's take a some section of your web page. Okay. Suppose in this division I write this here the hello world. Okay. So, in this case you can see I simply save this and reload my page, we cannot see nothing, but a div or section will be added here, but we cannot see this div because we didn't the set there the height, width or other parameters. So, now I want to style this div. So, I simply use here the external or internal, I use here the internal CSS, or if you want you can use the external CSS, it's not matter. So, in this case in this the example here I use the external internal CSS. So, I use here the style, I use the style and I call the div. Okay. Then I simply use the curly brackets and define. First of all, I define here the div height. I div this height will be, I gave this height will be 30 pixel, and also I define here the div width will be 50 pixel. Okay. I define this, and then I also gave this div background color. So, I use here the background color, and this background color will be orange. Okay. And when I save it, you can see here when I refresh it, a div will be added here. Okay. But we also need to increase this div width. So, I increase it the 100 pixel and save it, and when I click to reload this site, you can see a div will be added, and we can see also a div. Div means the section of your page. So, if you want you can increase this section in the height and width. Okay. So, now you can see here it will be this hello world H character is the added the corner. Okay. So, if you want you can change it. So, then you can need to use the padding. Okay. So, mainly padding is on the inside of the border of the element. So, in this case you can see hello world, this is our element. Okay. And now I want to border inside the border, so that it will be removed. Okay. So, you can simply use here the div, and I use here the padding. I gave this padding is 10 pixel. I simply save and click to run and refresh my web page. Now, you can see it will be remove the inside, it created the inside border on the 10 pixel. Okay. So, if you want you can remove the inside, actually you want to inside border on the element, here the my element is hello world. So, now I want to make a border inside. So, I use here the padding, and if you want you can use the margin when you need to outside border of the element. So, I randomly example here, suppose margin, I gave this margin property and I gave this margin is 50 pixel. It means it take a 50 pixel border around this element in the outside. Okay. So, I save it and refresh this page. So, you can see it get the 50 pixel border around this element of the outside. Padding is take the border in inside and margin will take the border in the outside of the element. Okay. So, I hope you understand. So, then we also discuss about the another properties. Suppose these properties will be font family and font size, font weight. Okay. So, I simply remove this all of my previous code. So, now I define here the heading tag. So, I call the S1 and gap this name is, suppose I write here the name is, I take a heading 1. Okay. So, now you can see here a heading 1 will be added in this here, but you cannot see any style in this case. So, now I will make a internal CSS. For this I use the style in my head section and I define here the style. Suppose I want to change here the font size. I use call my S1 element, I call this tag and then I define here the first argument is the font size and I gave this font size is 50 pixel. Okay. So, and I also want to make the font family. Font family is the different types of font family. So, you can use the different types of Arial. Suppose I use here the Arial and you can see here Arial, then Helvetica, then sans serif, and you can see here that there are the total three font family. Actually, in this case, when your computer or system don't reload the Arial, then it move to the Helvetica. Then if you don't reload this font Helvetica, then it will move to the sans serif. Okay. So, you can use here the different types of font family, but in this case when I open my browser, you can see here it will be Arial, because in this computer the Arial font will be supported. So, that is why you can see it will be Arial, but this Arial is not supported here, then it will be moved to the another font family Helvetica. Okay. I hope you understand in this case. So, now I also defined here the font width. So, you can simply use here the font width. I use here the font width, I gave this value is bold. So, when I simply, you can see it is the bold. Okay. So, now you can see here, if you want you can add a border between this you can see I want to add the border from here. So, I can simply use here the border. Suppose I want to use here the border and then I gave the border size, I simply use here the 3 pixel and then I also use the border, it will be solid. You can use the dotted or other information, I use the solid. Then I also use the border color, I gave this color is black. So, when I save it, so you can see it will be make a border. So, I hope you understand. So, now I also discuss about the another attribute in Google in CSV. Suppose I have a table. So, I make a table first. So, you can make the table easily, and previously class HTML class I already show you how you can easily make a table from another. So, you can simply go to my previous video and watch this all of this tutorial. Okay. So, now I want to make a table. So, for this I am using a table attribute. I take this table attribute. Okay. So, then in this table there is the two part, table head and table body. So, I simply use here the T head, it means the table head. I define the table head, then I in this case I define the table head. Suppose in this case the name and I also define the another row is it will be country. Then I also gave the another name is address city. I gave this the city. So you can see I make a 3 heading of this table. Okay, when I save it and reload my page, you can see the 3 heading will be added here. So now I want to add here the some information in my table body. So I use here the T body, it means the table body. So I define here the table body. I want to make the first row. For this I use the tr tag, it means row, and between this row tag I use here the td, means table data. So first of all name, I gave this name, suppose this name is Mijan, and I also gave the country is Bangladesh. Okay, and I also gave this city is Dhaka. So I add the another one row in my table data. So I simply copy this and I also add here the more 3. So now when I save it, you can see here it will be added in my here, but in this table you cannot see any border. Okay, so now I want to add the border. So I already show you how you can easily add the border in the table. So for this you need to use here the border. So I simply go to my code editor and I make a style in my head section. So it's called the internal CSS, and I call my table element. So here you can see this is a table tag. So I call this table tag and I define the curly bracket, and then I also define in the border. I gave this border, and border size will be 1 pixel and it will be solid, and I gave this border color will be black. Okay, when I save it and reload my page, you can see a border will be added in my web page. Okay, so now you can also add the every cell, you can want to make the every cell border in this case. So you can see here I simply open my code editor and call my another ts, means table head tag. Then I use here the border, and it will be, I gave this border size 1 pixel, and it will be solid. I use here the solid, and this color will be black. Okay, so when I reload this, you can see table header, every table header will be take the cell. Okay, it will be border. Okay, so now I also add here the another all of this thing. So you need take the td and then use the same thing. I use here the border, and then I use the border size 1 pixel. It will be solid and it will be color will be black. Okay, so when I save it, I hope you can get all of this border here. But in this case, if you want in the you can use here the only one tag. In this case, suppose you can simply use here the ts, then simply use the comma sign, then use the td. It means this style, means this border solid and black, it will be added your ts tag as well as also added the td tag. Okay, so I simply remove this, so and save it. So now when I reload this, you can see here you can get the same result, because in this case I add here the multiply selector. I use here the ts and td and I define their style. It will be like this. Okay, so now you can understand how you can easily add the border in your table section. So if you want, you can see here this the word Mijan, and it will be very near to this border. Okay, so if you want, you can create the some space inside this element. This element is Mijan. So now we want to insert the padding here. So I already discussed when you need to add some inside border, so you need to use the padding. So I simply use here the padding. So I gave this padding. I gave this padding is 5 pixel. So when I save it and reload my page, you can add it's take the inside, okay, every element inside the 5 pixel. Okay. So now if you want, you can use the all of this border with the collapse. So for this you need to use the collapse properties. So I simply use here the border collapse, and then I use here the collapse. So when I save it and I reload my page, you can see all of this page will be collapsed to each other. So I use here the border collapse and save it, and when I reload it, so I simply use this border collapse will be table section. So I use here the table and save it, and when I click to run, you can see all of this border will be collapsed to each other, and now this is make a perfect table. So you make practice this code and make a table like this. Okay. So now you can easily understand this is the very good table. So first of all you need to collapse, and then you need to use the value is the collapse. So then will be automatically this all of this border will be collapsed, and this table looks like this. Okay. So I hope you understand in this thing. So now we also discuss about the another elements of CSS. So it's very important. So I go to my code editor and delete my previous code. So now I delete this also this code. So now I want to add here, suppose I add here the 3 tag, is one tag, suppose this is the heading 1, this is the heading 2, this is the heading 3. So now if you want, you can make a style. Suppose in this case I use here the internal CSS and call my tag is 1, and in this case I use here the color, and this color will be blue. I simply save it, and when I reload my page, you can see this 3 tag will be added here. But if you want, you can only to style this will be blue for the second. Okay, I want to only for the second. So you can easily do it. You can just use here the second, you can use here the style inline style, then you define here the color, and this color will be defined, this color is red. So when I save it and reload it, you can see this will be only for second color will be red. But if you want, you can also add a ID of your element of your tag. You can just suppose I want to make the first I want to make the first heading will be blue color. So for this I make a ID, and I gave this ID name is min. Okay, you can give this ID name any ID name. So then you can use this ID name, you call this ID name and make this style of your own heading. So I make a style sheet here, you can see I already make a style, and then I call. So it will be remembered that when you call the ID, you always need to use here the hash, and then you can simply write your ID name min, and then you define your style. Suppose in this case I want to this ID element will be blue, so I use here the blue, and when I save it and when I click to, you can see only this one heading will be blue. So you can easily do it. So now if you want to also use here the another tag heading will be blue, so you can use here the same ID is mean, but it will be wrong, because you always remember that id is always unique. But if you want, you can define the same name, so then you can move to the class. Suppose in this case I use here the class and I gave this class name is mean, okay, and I also use here the class, this class name is mean, okay. So now I want to, actually id is a unique and its name will be not double or, okay. So now you can use here the only for class name is not unique, you can use the any class name or any other HTML element. So now you can see here, this is the class, I defined this class mean. So now I call this class, and you always remember that when you call the class, you use the dot notation, okay. So I dot notation, then I define my class name mean, it will be anything. So then I define my style blue. So when I save it, so now you can see here my heading 1 and heading 2 will be blue color. So when I save it and reload, you can see my heading 1 and heading 2 will be blue color. So you can easily define your class and id. So id means unique and class mean it not unique, it will be default 3 or 4 or what kind of class you need, okay. So if you want, you can also add this class in your third heading. So I simply copy and paste here, when I save it and click run, you can get the same result, okay. So it's very easy, I hope you understand in this case. So now you want, suppose you can also make the another, there are the CSS has the different types of selector. So we can add the different types of selector in this case. Suppose I want to make a button, in this case I make a button. So I use the button attribute and gave this button name is click me. So I cancel my previous style code. So I save it, and when I click to run, you can see a simple button will be added here. But now I want to add some style using the CSS. So it's very easy. So first of all, you make a, in this case I use the internal CSS. So I take the internal CSS in my head portion, and then I simply call my tag. So in this case my tag is the button, I call my tag button, and then I simply use here, suppose this button, I gave this button background color will be green, and I also add here the button height, button width, I gave this button width is 50 pixel, and I also gave the button height will be 20 pixel, okay. So when I simply save it and reload it, so you can see it will be very low. So I also increase this button width, it will be, I gave this 70 pixel, and height will be, I gave this the 30 pixel. So when I save it and click to run, you can get this button will be added here, okay. So now if you want, you can use here the another selector of CSS, this called the Sudo Selector. So it will be mainly used for the hover. Suppose you can see here, when I hover this button, it will be not change, but I want to, when I hover this button, it will be change this color. So I simply use this here. So for this I want to use here the button. Suppose I use here the button, I call the button, this is my tag, and then I use here the Sudo Selector. For this I use the clone, and then I use here the hover, and then I define when I hover what will be happened. Suppose in this case I want to, when I hover this button, it will be orange color. So then I define here the background color will be orange. So when I save it and refresh my page, okay, I refresh it, and when I hover, you can see it will be orange color. When I hover this button, it will be orange color, Okay. So, you can easily different types of style, and next class I also discuss about the some other design in CSS language in HTML, and how you can easily make this all of this HTML and CSS together. Okay. So, next class I also discuss about the huge amount of the CSS style code, and I hope you can practice this code. I hope you can easily understand everything in CSS. So, this is our main goal. You can see here, this is our main goal for the beginners to advanced guide to learning practical Web GIS, web design and development course. So, mainly in this course we not focus the Web GIS, we also focus the web design and development. So, I will definitely teach you so that you can easily understand everything in Web GIS as well as web design and development. Okay. So, I hope you enjoy these classes, and next time we also discuss at the another part of CSS, then move to JavaScript, then move to Bootstrap, then OpenLayer, GeoServer, PostGIS, PHP, Ajax and other libraries, and we can also use the live project of Web GIS and web development. Okay. So, I hope you enjoy these classes. So, just keep in touch with this YouTube channel, and also if you have any question regarding this course, you can just type your question in the comment section. I will try to answer all of this. So, today is no more. Okay. Thank you for watching.